And we are live. Always nice when my internet works. And I am here today with the one and only Stuart Jaffe, who is the author of somewhere around 70 books. I did not make him name them all by title because, we wanted to have something else on the show other than that. Stuart, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show, Mike.
And where are you calling in from?
North Carolina, a little town called Thomasville.
In the great state of North Carolina, just south of where I'm at. So as I said, you have you have 70 or so books.
Yeah.
What do you like to write?
I'm the author of a ton of different kinds of science fiction and fantasy. I'm best known for this, the Max Porter Paranormal Mysteries, which just had the 19th book out earlier this year. I'm sorry?
Are you a Jim Butcher with the Dresden Files? Do you have more books in your series?
People always ask me about that. So yeah, if you put us on a Venn diagram, there is a crossover. His, especially in the later books of his series, tends to get much more out there with the fantasy. Mine's the thing that one of the differentiators with the Max Porter Paranormal Mysteries versus other urban fantasy type things out there is that I take real history of North Carolina and mix it with witches and ghosts and curses magic. So it always ends up being a bit more grounded than some of these other series. Yeah. There's no going off to the Fey world or anything like that. But I write a lot. I write hey Dennis. I write all kinds of different fantasy, action fantasy thrillers, and contemporary fantasy, epic fantasy mixed with mystery. And then I have this, which is Pioneers the Pathway. The Pathway Ring is my my newest series. It's a science fiction series, and I'm about 60, maybe 70% done with book 2. I just got the cover art today. It's beautiful, so I'm really excited about that. That'll be coming out in a few months if everything goes well.
So I mentioned to a couple people that I was like, Stuart Jaffe tonight, he's written over 70 books. And I was like, I don't know a lot. I was like, but I know he writes, mysteries. And they're like, oh, mysteries. They're formulaic. He's just churning those out once a month. And that is not true. Is it?
No, I always get them done. I mean, I get one a year done because otherwise the fans would kill me if I skipped a year. Some years I can do 2. But hi everybody. There, mystery. Well, all genres have their tropes and their formulas. So it's just a matter of how you use them. And certainly after 19 books, Max Porter has, I wouldn't call it a formula, but there are things that I know if I don't put them in, my fans will be mad. I've learned this, that there are certain notes that have to be hit. And then beyond that, they want a fresh new story. But there are certain things that if I don't do them, or if I did the opposite, they'd be like, that's not a Max Porter book. And if you think about it, that's true of, you name it, Harry Potter. Every Harry Potter book is going to have certain aspects to it. Hermione is going to do her research thing. I can't remember.
Risk children's lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And these things have to happen or it doesn't feel right. It's almost kind of part of the setup. So you kind of have to, which is actually a good thing as an artist. Confines make for better art from us, I think.
Yep. And how long have you been writing?
Since the Stone Age. I've been about 30 years, professionally 30 years, or almost 30 years of professionally. I sold my first story 30 years ago, roughly. So that's how my series are so long. I'm just old. I've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. So if you do it a long time, you get a high number of books published.
Yeah. Yeah. When I go do conventions, like vendor type conventions, and I have my table and all these books out there, invariably there are some new writers who have an artist alley table, and they have like 1 or 2 books out, and they come by and they're like, how'd you do? They look so like it's a mountain, and it is. But I say, there was a time 30 some years ago where I had a table and I just had 2 books out. You just keep doing it, and it accumulates over time.
Yep. So, as I told you, James, he gave me a list of questions to make sure I ask you.
James,
and the first one I mentioned was to ask you about your writing process, and you use a voice recorder.
Yeah, not exclusively, but I a bunch of years back. So I played for fun as a hobby. I play guitar in a blues band and a blues rock band. And a bunch of years back, I started having some pain in my hands, and I started thinking, oh yeah, strumming and playing lead guitar and then typing all day, I might be setting myself up for bad things.
Yeah.
So I started using an MP3 recorder, and then I have my computer transcribe that into text, and then clean that up, and it's wonderful for all kinds of reasons. One, you can, once you're comfortable with it, you can dictate far faster than you can type. So most professional writers I know, as long as they're not staring at a blank screen but know what they're setting out to write, can do about average like 1,000 words an hour. And that's true for me too, typing. But if I'm recording it, I'm just walking around my house and I'm recording it, and I can do 2,000 words an hour easily. It's so much faster. And then when I go to a convention and I have a 5-hour drive, I have a ear thing and microphone, and I can write while I drive. It's wonderful. And it's not against the law as far as I know.
So 2,000, if you have a 5-hour drive, that's 10,000 words. Yeah, that's a nice start.
Well, it doesn't quite go as fast when you're driving, because my writing, you're trying to drive and pay attention to the road and compose a sentence, but it's better than nothing.
Right.
And so even if I wrote 1,000 words, and that's great.
And you have to edit out all those comments you make to other drivers.
Sometimes. Yeah.
So how long have you been using a voice recorder now?
Not quite a decade, but quite a long time, I think.
Nice.
I can't remember. I've been doing it longer than, so I use Dragon Naturally Speaking to transcribe it, and some number of years back they went to a subscription model, but I still have the original version I have, so I don't have to do that. I'm mourn the day when the computer I'm talking to you on right now, when it dies, because then that goes with them, and I'll have to start paying a monthly fee, which will not make me happy.
So EL is here, and this is one of my questions, so we might as well hop to it. Do you do your own audiobooks? And then follow up as he sees the recording gear.
Oh, yep. Yeah, that is exactly what that is. So I have my undergrad degree was in theater, and I was the co-host and editor and producer of a podcast for 6 years back in the early days of podcasting. We did like 400 some episodes. So I had all the equipment, I have the knowledge, I have the vocal training, and I thought, why not? We'll give it a shot. And the reaction was very positive, and so I started doing that. And almost all of my books are me. There are a couple where I paid somebody else to do it because I thought their voice would be better for the project. Or in one case, it was a friend of mine who was trying to get started, and so I let him do a couple of my books so he could get some credit. And then the trilogy I did for Falstaff Books, the Ridnight trilogy, that they sold the audio rights to Tantor, so Tantor paid us, and they did the work, which was wonderful because I enjoy doing it, but it's much faster when other people do it. If you pay somebody professionally to do it, it'll take them about a week, and because that's all they do. I do like a chapter a day. I record, and then once it's done recording, I have to edit it about a chapter or two a day. So my fans know now, like when the latest Max Porter book came out, I have one fan in particular who basically he says, "Oh man, I can't wait to read it." He said it'll be about another year, won't it? Because he only listens to them on audiobooks. And I'm like, yeah, probably at the end of this year, beginning of next year, it'll be done. Because there's other things in the queue that have to get done too. So they're patient. Thank you. Thank you, all of you who are watching, or my fans. Thank you for being so patient.
So the other thing James told me to ask you about is he said, talk to you about working with cover artists and how you have networked with every single artist at every single con, it seems like. So one, where do you find the time to do this? And two, I'm assuming you're always looking for the next artist for your next book, or?
So I started years and years ago when when you go to conventions as an author, any kind of convention usually has some kind of art gallery. Most even small conventions usually have that. They'll have an artist guest of honor, and then at the big GalaxyCon where there's like 40,000 people and they're all there to see movie stars and we're just there selling books. There's tons and tons of illustrators and artists there. So I just started going around, and anytime I see somebody's art I like that I think would work well for covers, even if they're not exactly what I'm doing at the moment, I talk to them, see if they do book covers, see if they can give me a range of what their price is, and if it's somewhat reasonable for what I can afford, I take their card. And I have a huge stack. I can't even show you, that it'd fall all over, but it's a huge stack of cards and names. And so when a new project comes up, I can just start going through that and see who fits the bill. And then like the Max Porter series, usually it's roughly every 3 books it switches artists. So over the years, I've worked with tons of different artists, and it's a lot of fun. Some of them I would love to still be working with, but usually what happens is I get them when they're just getting started and I can afford them. And then then they start to do really well. And then I get that dreaded email where they're like, I love working with you, but next time we do a contract, I'm going to have to raise my prices. My favorite story with that is Jaffe, who did all of the Malia Chronicles, which is a 6-book series I did. That's a post-apocalyptic fantasy where magic caused the apocalypse. So he did all those. And for those of you who are Max Porter fans, he did all the red covers for Max Porter. He's a fantastic artist. And he's well known. He does, even when I had hired him, he was just starting out doing comic book covers for Marvel and DC. And I'll never forget this, where I had him. I had him under contract for like 3 covers or so, and I was sitting on the can reading Entertainment Weekly back when it was a magazine, and I'm looking through, and there in the corner is this. It's a pretty iconic image of Iron Man as a black woman with this huge afro, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, that looks like his work. And sure enough, in a little caption, it says Jaffe, and I just was like, no. And I went over to my wife and I showed her, and I'm like, she's like, oh, that's really neat. That's your artist. I'm like, you don't understand. If this is an Entertainment Weekly, then I can't afford him anymore. And sure enough, his price like almost tripled from what I was paying him. And I totally get it. it's what he was worth suddenly. But that was one where I was like, I just can't. I just can't afford that. It's just too much.
Yeah. For my first series I started, my fantasy series, I had 3 covers from the artist, and I know it's going to be 7 books. I've written 4 of them so far, but I'm like, I know what happens. I know what's on the covers. And the guy's like, Mike, I've just been accepted to a very highbrow art institute on the internet, and he's like, you can look here. And I looked for, like, he did oil paintings, and his oil paintings had been marked up 5 times what he had been for. And I'm like, Dimitri, can you do my last 4 covers now? So I got him to do all my covers.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's nice that he did it. This is what happened. This is why whenever I work with a cover artist, if I can, I will lock them into like a 3-book deal. Because I usually, by that point, that's usually 3 years, and 2 to 3 years, and then hopefully I can lock them in for another 3 books. That's what I've got right now. I've got a wonderful woman named Mary Morgan, who's from Brazil, and she's done the last 4 or 5, I guess 5 Max Porter books. So I've been able to lock her in over and over twice now, and as long as I can keep getting her, once I can't, then we'll change artists and find somebody else.
Yeah. So, and I'm not setting you up for vitriol. At least I don't think so. But what are your thoughts about AI and having book covers done by AI? Yay, nay?
Oh, it's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, I talked to a friend, and I mean, he goes, I hate it. I would never do it. But honestly, it's a static image. Is there anything easier to copy than a static image? He goes, artists are screwed. He's like, as far as authors go, tell me when it can write emotion accurately, then I'll be worried. Until then, I don't care. He's like, but artists, he's like, I feel sorry for a man because AI is going to be, eating their lunch.
It is, and it's going to happen to other writers too. There's going to be a point, probably in my lifetime, when it becomes indistinguishable. But I don't think it is. It's the end. It might be the end of those art forms, but for me, my opinion is that art exists. Art is the act of a human being talking to other human beings through some medium about what it means to be a human being. That's what we're doing. I mean, we entertain and we do all these other things, but ultimately that's the aspect that makes it. That's why we do that. That's why we started making music. That's why we started doing sculptures. We're trying to express something that's really difficult to express about ourselves to each other, to try and understand what we are and what we're doing. And while a computer might be able to mimic that, if they ever mimic it to the point where we can't tell the difference, I think what we'll do as human beings is find something that a computer can't do, and that will become the new art form. So maybe it'll be a chainsaw sculptures done live, so you can see it's a human being doing it. I'm not. I mean, that probably not, but you never know. It's always some kind of thing that is unique for us that separates us. So.
See, I'm of the opinion that I'm not worried about the writing. Now, last year, a guy he said he used Chat GPT-4, the most up to date, and he said, write me a 1,000-word story, and he did it 5 times with the parameters, and he talked to 5 authors and said, hey, give me a 1,000-word story about this, go. And then he just posted all 10 and said, can you tell the difference? And I read about the first 4, and I was like, AI, human, AI. And then I was like, I'm not reading all 10 of these. But I looked and I was dead on. And to me, the AI, it's A, B, C, D. There's like no remembering what happened earlier. It doesn't do that. It just is straight. It's like driving a road. There's no turning around. There's no, thinking about the gas station you passed. It's just.
The other problem with, I agree. And the other problem with AI, and this is in terms of if you're an artist listening to this and you're looking for hope as a writer or a painter or musician or whatever, one of the things is, unless they fundamentally change the foundation of what AI does, because AI is basically a glorified aggregator. Okay.
Yeah.
It just, right. So unless they change that, which means rebuilding it from the ground up, as far as I understand, AI will never be able to do anything great. Okay, it'll only be able to get you an average story, an average piece of.
Yeah, and I tell people, if I can't beat AI, then I need to do something else. I think you're frozen. I don't know if that's you or me. Might be you. So just so everyone knows, Stuart warned me that this might happen. So he will probably be. Let's see if I remove add to stage. Yeah, so he will be back. So we have commercial interruption here. So I will tell you again, Stuart has been writing for 30 years. He has 70 books. So it's not formulaic stuff. Let's remove you. There you go.
I'm back. I told you, if you count on the time we were talking before this show started, about 40 minutes. My ISP, I have a serious beef with them when it comes to me streaming.
Well, we got about 20 minutes in, but that's okay. You are back. So yeah, to me, I don't know when AI will ever be, someone fires a gun and kills someone. What is the reaction? And it's just going to go, let's see here. They're angry. Oh, wait, no, they're happy. They meant,
Right.
They have no idea. They don't understand feeling. So how are they ever going to rate anything with emotion? Unless they just happen to, on the drop down menu, they pick the right one. That's like,
Right.
have you seen on Amazon? I got the one thing they said, hey, do you want an audiobook? We can have our AI do it for you. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing this, but I'm curious. So I looked and it's like, and you have to go through like, you can make it say this is an angry voice or is a happy. And I'm like, do I have to go through the entire thing and I'm like, God, no, I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
And I mean, I have a phenomenal narrator for my fantasy stuff, so I'm not giving him up.
From a completely selfish point of view, if AI voices audiobooks become more popular or become more ubiquitous, I shouldn't say popular because I don't think people will like them. It'll benefit me because people will be like, I can actually hear the actual author.
Yeah.
And they'll know it's not AI because it's me. It's this voice.
Yeah. I don't know. I've talked to other authors and I'm like, you know what? AI is not going away. So the people, who are like, no, ban it, never. I'm like, it's not going away. It's going to be used 5 years from now. There are going to be X number of authors who are like, I do AI covers because I can afford it. And who are you, a gatekeeper, to tell me not to do that? I can't, I don't believe I can afford, which, we had an author on last week, his cover, which I told him, I was like, I love your cover. It's awesome. He goes, oh, it was $35. And he went to, a site that had the, covers already generated or whatever. And he's like, this fits my book.
Here's the thing. The people who want to use AI to write a book or to do their art or whatever, these are the people who they don't want to write a book. They want to have written a book. They think that there's some, they think there's some, they glamorize what they think my life is.
Yeah.
I was just having this conversation with somebody. I may have been a different podcast, actually, it was with my bandmates because my bandmates all know I'm a writer, and they're like, and I've dedicated some books to my bandmates for different things. And my drummer was just like, I dedicated a book to him a few years ago, and he still shows it around. It's like, to him, it's a big, big deal. And I was like, I was saying, like, I get it, like, but me, like, I'm not, I'm not like something special. I'm just this guy. He's, you know what I mean? But I get that to the audience. I'm something special for that. And so I go through, and that's what I think. People go to cons and they see us being treated. I say to my wife when I go to a con, I'm always like, bye, hun, I'm going to go play celebrity for a weekend. And that's what it is, because we don't get treated celebrity style. Like there's no, $5,000 swag bag, in my room or anything like that. And but there is, the fans treat us like, they look at us, and the fact that I autograph a book means something huge to them. And might as well be, I could be Tom Cruise. It's that big of a deal to some readers, which I love. And I wonder, I mean, it's there's not a lot of feedback as an author. So when you get that, it's great. But it's also not reality, like it is for that weekend. But reality is, I come home and, about 20 minutes before we started this whole thing, I was cleaning cat puke off the floor. So,
glamorous,
glamorous life, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think, like I said, I think people who want to have written a book but don't actually want to do the work for it, they just want to receive accolades for it or something.
Yeah, like I always laugh when you see on the internet, it's like, 7 side hustles you can do if your main job isn't paying you enough. And one of them is always write a book. And I'm like,
yeah, that's the other thing. So a lot of people think it's a, get rich quick thing. And it's not even a get rich slow thing. It's just, unless you're very lucky, and it does happen, but for most people, it's not even, if you're lucky, it's get enough money to survive, not get rich.
Yeah. So I'm sure this has happened to you before. It's happened to me once, and I just couldn't stop laughing about it. Parents came up with a teenage son, and they're looking at the book, and they're like, "Ah, you like it?" He goes, "Yeah, we're going to get this book." I'm like, "Oh, do you want me to sign it?" They're like, "Why would you?" I'm like, "I'm the author." Like, "Oh my God, you're the author?"
Yeah.
And then they're like, "Can he go around the table? Can we get a picture of him with you with the book?" I'm like, "Sure. But do you want me in the picture? You want me just to move, and you can have the banners behind you?" And I'm just like, "Really? You want to take a picture with me because it's a big deal?" Huh. I'm like, I can't fathom that, but sure, whatever you want.
It's actually one of the reasons. Here's a little selling pro tip that because like James and myself and Darren Kennedy, we usually have a corner together at these big shows, and we kept coming into that situation where somebody, I'd be pitching all these books, and they would just think I'm a salesperson, and then until I went to go sign it, and then like, you're the author. So literally now, whenever I introduce somebody comes to the table, and I'd be like, "Hi," and I will introduce myself, and I'll say, "I wrote these books. Darren wrote those. James wrote those." I tell them that we are the authors right up front, and it makes a difference because automatically, so many of them are like, "Oh," and suddenly they're paying much more close attention. I feel pretty confident in saying we probably make extra sales over the course of a weekend just by mentioning that we're the author in the beginning. So there you go. Protest.
So, I mean, that's why I have this shirt that, Mike Moment, author. I have 5 of these, 5 different colors that I wear to, and
that
this
helps,
is not,
but you gotta say it because it's amazing how much, even though they're there buying books, they don't read. I have a big thing behind, we have our names in big things behind. We put little placards up up front that like for each of us with our name and author. They don't, and my name is on every book in front of me.
Yeah.
And I even say I'm Stuart Jaffe, and the name is everywhere. And there are still people who will be like, "You don't get it." So,
oh yeah, I've had one guy go, "So what is your name?" I'm like, "Mike Moment, Mike Moment here, Mike Moment here. Here's another book with Mike on the banner behind me, Mike Moment." Yeah. I'm like, "Come on, you got 8 choices here."
Now I give them this much is especially at a big show like a Dragon Con or a Galaxy Con. You're on a massive floor with like 20-30,000 people. People are calling at you left and right, trying to get you to come to their booth. It's a lot of sensory overload. So sometimes it's just their brain is, just trying to look, going, okay, there are books. Do I want a book? How much money did I just spend getting William Shatner to give me a photo and sign it? How much money do I have left? Can I afford gas? All that's literally going through their heads sometimes.
Correct.
So you got to have a little bit of leeway. So, but don't be afraid to say it out loud too.
So I want another pro tip from you. How do you get people to come to your table?
Okay, so this is something that's has to become I can give you some overall information, but it's different per person. It's different on who you are, what you're selling, what you look like, are 3 of the big factors. So I came up through the ranks of writing with John Hartness. He and I were. I was started out a couple of years before him. We kind of became friends, and we started doing shows together, sharing tables and all that. This is long before he started Falstaff Books, and he came from a background of selling lighting equipment to theaters. So we would sit down at these things, and I'm going to swear for a minute because that's part of his shtick. People will be walking by, and he's sitting there, and he's a big guy, and he'd look at them, and he'd go, and he just point at somebody, go, "You, come here, buy my shit." And they would. And I'd be like, okay, I'm just learning how to sell. that works. It's that easy. So I'd sit there and I'd look around and I point to somebody and say, you, come here and buy my shit. And they'd look at me like, who the hell are you? Don't talk to me. And they'd cower away. And it took me a little time. And I eventually figured out there was a lot going on there. But first of all, John is huge. So that's why he's sitting. If he were standing, and he looks like a biker, so if he was standing and he sat there, you come here and buy my shit, people would have been scared. But he's sitting back, smiling, and he's selling, at that time particularly, he was selling comedic books called Bubba the Monster Hunter, right? So it worked. That was part of it. I'm short. I'm only 5'4". So if I, especially with all the books I have now, literally, if I'm sitting, you wouldn't even know I'm there. I have to stand up. Number one, and I'm not big and intimidating, so I can change the way I speak based on that. But the key thing I learned watching him is the more he would do it, I realized he's not saying it to everybody. So I didn't think he was being random about it. That didn't make any sense. And I realized he's profiling people. He knows who's most likely to buy his book.
Yep.
And that's who he's saying it to. And so eventually I started looking at my data and figuring out that while just like him and like you and any writer, we have a readership that probably spans the entire spectrum.
Right.
Of the majority of my readers are middle-aged women and older, and the older they get, the more they love what I'm writing. Now, I have plenty of male readers, but I only have so much breath in my lungs during a day. I can only pull over so many people. So basically, I sit there and I'm looking and I'm watching and waiting for those women. And when I see them, my shtick is I sit there and I point at them. Because they're usually one of the other tells us they're looking at the books, like kind of salivating because they're books. And I'm like, you're a reader, come over here. And 9 out of 10 times they look at me and they're like, I have a reader. How did you know? And then they come over and then I have my spiel from there. Now, I've seen Darren try and do the same thing. And sometimes it works for him, but rarely. He looks at people, he'll look at a group of people and he'll be like, which one of you is the reader? And like especially because he has some YA stuff. So there'll be like a gaggle of like teenage girls who are all dressed up in costume. And he'll just say, which one of you is the reader? And like, there's 5 of them and 4 of them will all point to one girl and she'll get a blush and he'll be like, well, come here, we can have a little time in this weekend for just you. Or he says something like that. And he's, if you know Darren Kennedy, he's one of the nicest human beings in the world. It exudes off of him. We call him the Paladin because he is that honest and good. So that comes off of him. And so these girls feel safe and they come over. And the next thing you know, he's selling them a book. So it's just a matter of finding who your audience is and what's the best way to talk to them, given whether you look intimidating, whatever you have. If you have, we shared a table with a young guy, real nice guy who was selling horror stuff, and he was clearly on the spectrum. He spoke well, but it was clearly a struggle to just kind of get the words out. You can hear I can just spew out words as I'm doing, but he was like a little bit more careful, and he kind of figured out nobody's going to really understand a joke from him. Nobody, he figured out a shtick that worked for him. And I was really impressed that he knew how to talk to people given his limitations so that they would still come and listen to his spiel and buy a book.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I was with James a couple of times, he's like, do you like to read? I like to write.
Yes. That's James's thing. I've heard that thing so many. I've been doing shows with James for probably a decade. I've heard that spiel. And again, that one, I've said it, tried it, doesn't work.
Yeah, I've tried it. I'm not nearly as successful as he is. But yeah, you're right. You have to come. And another author who I was talking to at Steel City Con, he'll just sit there and he'll go, words for sale, fresh words for sale. and and people like, what are you talking? And they'll come over, and then you've captured them.
Yeah. So it's figuring out who that person is, and again, just figuring out what works for you. And when I say figuring out what works for you, it means you're going to have to try something and fail, and then try. It's the same with pitching books. I mean, I can pitch all my books all day long, but the I'll be Dennis. I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But that's because I have been pitching them for years. It took me years of going, okay, hey, if I say it this way, just like you edit, something you've written, you have to kind of edit your pitch over and over until you get something that works. Dennis just put in a comment about saying, what kind of books do you like? And, what kind of books do you like to read? And yeah, that's a generally a good one. At the bigger cons, it's less effective. I've used it many times, and what I've discovered lately is first of all, especially at the big massive cons, or maybe it's just the kind of people I like to pull over because they are, I'm like, you're a reader, and they come over and they're like, I am a reader. So if I sit there and I say, what kind of books do you like to read? They say everything.
Everything, yes.
Not helpful. And so then I started saying, well, what kind of books do you like to read besides everything? And they'd be like, oh, besides everything? Well, and I think so. I've noticed what helps is narrow it down. So either saying like, what are you reading now? Or who's your favorite author at the moment? Because these people, read a wide variety, which are my favorite kinds because I write a wide variety. But if I'm going to pitch my entire table to you, it's going to take a good 5 minutes, and I'm happy to do it. But you may not want to be there for 5 minutes because you got to go to the bathroom, or your spouse is off down there. You don't want to lose them, or whatever the case. So, if you sit there and say to me, "Well, I don't like mysteries. I only like action," I'm like, "Well, I've got the perfect thing for you here, and we can forget about the rest of my table that I'm." Or if they, and I've had that. I've had people sitting there say, I only like science fiction. I'm like, great. Most of what I have is fantasy, but I have these books here. Let me show you those. Whatever.
And I'll tell you what I started doing this year, because I went to Steel City last year in December with James, and I sold just shy of $700 of, I have 5 books. And so, I'm like, okay, that, for me, that's pretty good.
I've been wanting Steel City for a long time with him because he keeps saying it's a great show.
And he sold like 1,800, and I'm like, well, he has 25 books. I have 5. He has his compendium, the hardback that he just got that was $100 that he sold 2 of, including one in the last 10 minutes on Sunday. I'm not in any way jealous or mad. No, not at all. Anyway, and then this April I went again with him, and what I decided after I did December with him, I'm like, you know what? I don't have 25 books, and it'll be another, 10 to 15 years before I do. But I want to have more books on my table. So I just went around to indie authors. I know, I'm like, hey, sell me your book cheap, and then I'll put it on my table and I'll sell it, and you'll get a new fan, and I'll make a few bucks. And so in April, I could only bring one of my things, but I had 30 books from, 5 by me and 25 by other authors. And it's not a competition, but it is a competition. And I think James beat me by like $20 total. I mean, the difference between what we each sold. So, and I was like, okay. And I mean, afterward, he's like, now I understand how come Falstaff, how that works for him, because, all you did was get all these books and now you're reselling them. And I'm like, yeah, well, I tell people, tell me what it costs to print and ship, add $2 per book, and then I will sell your book. And if I can't sell it, then, you already got the money for it. So, and that is, I mean, I've doubled what I've made at Comic-Cons since I started doing that this year versus, if you're listening out there, have some friends. And I tell people the biggest thing is only get books that you can stand behind and you can, be enthusiastic about. Because I've had people like my books, I'm like, I don't know who you are. I don't know what you write. How am I going to sell your book? And they're like, well, I'll give you a copy. You can read it. I'm like, do you know how big my TBR is just trying to keep up with the books my friends have written? I'm like, I don't have time. And there's friends that I'm like, look, I can't sell your book. I'm like, I like it, but one guy, I love his book. It's probably one of my 5 favorite books I've ever read. I've never been able to sell it at a Comic-Con. Now, I've had 3 tries, but I'm like, I'm clearly not selling it right. Give me your two-sentence pitch. Because the other thing I tell people is I was like, look, your cover has to sell because I'm going to try to push my books. So, and if they kind of like eyes glaze over, I'm like, well, do you like more dark fantasy? I have this. You want cozy? I have, and I'll go to theirs, if I'm thinking I'm going to lose them, but I'm not going to lead with their book. So,
Sure.
but so there's just some books that I have, and I'm like, if I ever sell these 5 books, I'm never getting more because I will be saddled with them for years. And I'm like, and some of them are just absolutely great books. I love them, and I'm like, I don't know. I have to find a different way to pitch them because what I'm doing does not work.
That's. I mean, you're going into we're discussing now book selling as opposed to writing or selling your own books. But being a book seller, that is a problem. I mean, that's publishing. That's Falstaff Books has hundreds of books in their catalog. Some which don't sell at all, and some they don't even have to. They could just like put it out, and it just sells just by breathing on it. That's always the case. There's, I mean, if it was all merit and what is good writing, there are a lot of huge hits that never have become huge hits because they're horribly written books, but for whatever reason,
50 Shades of Grey, yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's one of everyone's favorite punching bag at the moment, but yeah.
So tell me a little bit about Max Porter. What is he like?
Max Porter. Here, I'll give you the pitch for it, so we can kind of segue from what we were just doing. So the pitch for Max Porter is it's my best-selling series. It's about a husband and wife who moved down to Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and they discover his office is haunted by the ghost of a 1940s detective. So they do what anyone in the situation would do. They start a detective agency with a ghost, because what else can you do? And I take real history of the area, usually odd, strange history, and I mix it with witches, ghosts, curses, and magic. That's my pitch. That's really what it is. Each book it involves usually multiple bits of history of the area, and I find interesting things that are odd that also have enough unknowns that I can plug in witches and magic where I want to. And Max and his wife and their ghost partner Marshall Drummond, and it's that trio. And there are other characters that have come and gone, and in their little found family, and it's a lot of fun. It's kind of like if you like the show Supernatural, there's or the Dresden Files there's good Venn diagram mixing there.
Yeah. So Max Porter himself doesn't have any superpowers or anything.
Nope.
He's just friends with a ghost.
He's just a guy. His wife. So he events that happen very early in the first book, he ends up with the ability to see Marshall Drummond, and the only ghost he can see. Mm-hmm. His wife has always had the sight of ghosts. She can see all ghosts, and she I forget what book it starts, but pretty early on in the series, she starts learning witchcraft, and then by now has become quite an accomplished witch, and is trying to be a good witch, and be witches. But yeah, the Max's superpower is that he is really good at researching. That's in fact the reason they moved down to North Carolina is he got a job to do research on this one project, and which of course turns out to be a can of worms. That's the whole part of what the whole first book is about. But that's his big thing. So he's the one who's always delving in and finding the truth of what's going on in these histories, while because the ghost is a ghost, Max sometimes has to be the arms and legs for Marshall and go in and do the legwork, and the two of them have a fun antagonistic relationship. They tease each other a lot. They're sarcastic to each other a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's very snarky to each other.
Okay, so we've reached the point where somebody has to go into the bulb dome. Okay. I was going to suggest Max Porter, but you might want his wife. So again, what we're going to do is we're going to take one of your characters, so we want to know more about them without you giving us spoilers. So they're going to be transported. You've played D&D before?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they're going to be transported to some new location that ChatGPT generated for me a list, and I'll roll die to see which one it is. They will have a potion. The potion is 100% effective, but you don't know what it does. So you can use it on yourself or throw it at the adversary. Either way, 100% effective, but you have no idea what it does. Then you'll be given a choice. You can have a regular item or you can have a weapon. If you get a regular item, you'll face a regular animal. If you get a weapon, you'll face a fantasy creature. And then I will set the scene and say, you turn the corner, you see this thing, it stares back at you, glares at you. What happens next?
Oh, man, all my people are going to die.
So who do you want to be sent into the Bald Dome?
Oh, this is a tough decision. I mean, on the one hand, you may want, I get wanting to have Sandra, his wife, because she's the witch, but I purposely created a magic system that she uses that's slow. You can't just you have to draw out these things and it takes time to cast a spell. There's no fast going. So that really won't help her, although she will have arcane knowledge. Sure. You know what? We'll do Sandra because people have always asked me to do a spin-off series for her. So here we go. This is her spin-off series.
Okay, so Sandra has all of a sudden been whisked away, and she has been sent to number 6, is a floating island suspended in the sky.
Okay.
Sorry, not much more. I blame you, AI. What is your favorite color?
Blue.
Sure. Okay. Sandra has a blue fizzy potion in an Erlenmeyer flask with a cork stopper. Again, it's 100% effective. You have no idea what it does. Okay. So now we're to the point where you have to make a decision. Sandra can have a common item and face a common animal, or she can have a weapon and face a fantasy creature. Which does she choose?
Oh, we have to go with a weapon.
Okay. I always
make this as hard as possible.
Okay. If you'd gone with a common item, she would have got 3 tallow candles. But you didn't. You went with a weapon, so she has a spear, which, all things considered, solid. Okay. So instead of facing a Bengal tiger, she has to face 17, which is a minotaur. So she's on.
I thought it was gonna be like 17 orcs. I'm like, oh my goodness. No, ain't one minotaur. Okay.
So she's on the island. It's a tropical island with coconut trees. She's poking at the one tree with her spear, trying to knock the coconut down because she doesn't know how she got there, making sure she doesn't destroy her little potion. The coconut falls down, it rolls, she goes to get it. She looks up and lo and behold, there's a minotaur with his 2-sided axe, just staring at her, just snorting almost at her. What happens next? And I will warn you, if it goes to like trading blows, you want me to roll, I will, but 70% of my rolls are under 10. So just know that going in. So what happens now? Sandra's trying to pick up the coconut. The minotaur is 20 feet away, double axe, like this, and he just sort of snorts once or twice and is just glaring at her.
Okay. But we're not in combat yet.
No, and so we did this because we had a couple authors like, well, my characters don't fight, so they would just run away. So we're like, okay, it doesn't have to be a gladiatorial one-on-one. You can make friends with them. Last week, Michael Roberti, he was fighting a manticore, and they missed 4 times in a row, like face to face, because I rolled each time and I never rolled higher than a 7. And so at that point, he's like, at this point, they just sit down and drink tea because apparently they will never hit each other. So, okay. We have
I got you. I'm set. Okay. This is what she's going to do. She's going to roll the coconut toward the gently, friendly way toward the minotaur. And whatever the minotaur is doing, while that's happening, she's going to start using her spear to draw in the sand a circle and start putting it in witch runes.
So I'm going to play the part of the minotaur for you. And he's going to see the coconut, and he's going to take his axe, and he's just going to whack it and break it in two with his axe.
Okay.
Very authoritatively.
So she's going to put her hand on her hip and go, that wasn't very nice unless you were offering me milk, coconut milk. Then she'll get back to drawing her runes. And keeping an eye, as long as he's 20 feet away or not looking like he's going to charge, she's going to take the time she can to cast a spell.
So he's going to pull his axe up out of the ground. It's going to get stuck on a tree root a little bit, but then he's going to just start slowly advancing because, he has all the time in the world. He's not afraid. So he's slowly advancing, his back over his shoulder again, just looking at her, grunting, 15 feet away now.
Okay. I'm going to just say that she's done drawing what she needs to draw. She'll get down on her knees, but she's going to look out in the sky and point at something.
Okay.
And see if she can buy herself some time by confusing this thing.
He does. He's not the brightest, so he looks because he has an axe ready to cut whatever it is in half.
Trying to keep an eye on this, she's going to also start trying to get into a meditative state to do her spell.
As you do when minotaurs are coming, yes.
Yes. Well, as long as she can keep buying time, she's smart. She'll figure this out.
Okay.
She's not. Some of the lore in my series is, some spells or very easy spells don't take that long. So she for one thing she wants to do, she's practically there already. That's not going to be a huge thing. It's just not very dangerous. But she was trying to kill the minotaur. That would take a long time. It would also take blood, and that's a whole other thing.
So he takes a couple swings at trees nearby to cut them down to see what it is that she was pointing at. So you got your time.
Okay. Well, that's good. So then she starts muttering quietly in a language that no human has ever heard other than witches. A very old language.
Okay.
She's still good.
He is coming closer, kind of like, what is she even saying? Is she talking to me? Now he's like, I can always cleave her in half. I'm not in a rush. So he kind of gets within 10 feet now, and he's kind of leaning forward, trying to understand what she's saying.
Okay. When he gets close enough that which 10 feet seems pretty close enough, but if he gets a little bit closer, as long as it's just in this curious mode, she will raise her head and raise her hand, and the sunlight, blinding bright light, will come out of her hand, enough to basically blind the minotaur.
So like this. Okay, so Minotaur is blinded. Now he's cussing in Minotaur.
And she will get out of the way.
And he has an axe in front of his face to kind of protect his eyes. And she hightails it from there. Is that what she does?
Yeah, I mean, she just burned his eyeballs, or at least burned his retinas. I mean, I don't see him able to see her again.
Yeah. Okay. So she manages to get away. It's rare when someone's character actually dies, but sometimes people go to obnoxious lengths like, no, my guy with a club will defeat a griffin. And I'm like, okay, sure. You really like your character. This is not canon, right?
What just happened? This is the problem I face in every Max Porter book is I put them in a dangerous situation, and then I remember, oh yeah, magic doesn't happen really fast. What are they going to do until I can get a spell off, or are they going to do something that doesn't require magic because they can't just they can't just have magic solve the problem.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a problem I purposely set up because I don't want magic to solve the problem easily right away. But it's weird. Like I've been in situations like that, but I'm writing it so I can say, well, I'll take the rest of the day and figure this out. Doing it live like this, I'm like, okay, I got to figure this out now. What is she going to do? That was a lot of fun.
So the last question here I got I added from James' list is, if someone is a complete newbie going to their first Comic-Con. Let's say they waited till they have 3 books. I started with just 1 book because I'm an idiot. But let's say they waited till they had 3, and they're going to their first con. It's this weekend. They're excited. What would you tell them is your very best advice?
If they have 3 books, this is a serious, important distinction. We're talking 3 in the same series, like a trilogy?
Yeah.
Okay. In that case, I would tell them, don't waste your money getting a table at one of these big cons. Go to a small convention and get on panels and start talking to people. Because when you're selling 1 book, 2 books, 3 books, especially if they're all of a series, and you just spent hundreds of dollars, $300, $400, $500 to have your little artist alley table. Somebody who's, looking at every table and already bought, books from me, which means they've got to just spend a ridiculous amount of money from me and James and all that. They're going to come to, regardless, they come to your table and you say, well, here's my series. It's about mud people who use mud to make magic. And they look at it and they go, nah, it really doesn't. I only like, mysteries.
Right.
You can't sell them anything.
Yeah.
Right. If they come to my table and they say, and I try to sell them this, and they're like, well, I don't really like paranormal mysteries. I'm more into like dragons and all that. Oh, well, I have high fantasy. Oh, that doesn't sound like that's what I'm looking for. I have a contemporary fantasy. Oh, that's not. Well, I have this. I have that. Generally, if I can get you to my table, I can sell you something. And if I'm a table with other authors, I can say, oh, you like dragons, go talk to James. So, and that's an important thing when you're laying down a lot of money for a table is what's the likelihood you're really going to sell those books. You need to build up that readership, and you're not going to sell books 2 and 3. You're only really selling book 1 anyway.
Yeah.
So, I usually tell people to wait till they have a couple things to actually sell, and then start getting a table at the smaller cons so you can get comfortable. It's a lot cheaper to try out your pitch when your table costs you $30.
Yeah.
And getting to speak on panels so people can hear you talking about your book. It's so much easier to get your feet wet and figure out what's working, what isn't. But when you've spent whatever, again, $300-$400 for a table, you're spending hotel, a show like GalaxyCon easily can cost $1,000 for the weekend just to be there. Yeah. Now every sale matters, and if you don't want to lose your shirt, you got to have your pitches down and know what's going to work. So I think people try to jump into the deep end too early.
That I absolutely, when I had my 1 book on my first Comic-Con, I went to AwesomeCon in DC, and I paid $350 for a table, like 6 years ago. Yep. And I barely made table back. And that's because I worked so hard. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, I like it. It's like, well, I have 1 book.
Right.
Yeah. So, and I will tell people, last year I went to Columbus, Ohio. They had a book fest, the library did. And they had the big, revival tent, and they had 100 authors in this tent. And the bigger name authors were in the library, which was air conditioned because this was July. So when you have 100 other authors in the tent, no one is going to buy your series. They're going to buy book 1 because they're like, you know what, I'm going to taste test this one and that one and this. They're going to get 8 books from 8 different people. And I did not sell a single book 2, 3, or 4. I had my first sci-fi. I had my 1 fantasy, and the other 3 fantasy books. I just carried them because I wanted to work out. So yeah, know what you're getting into. I've gone to a couple cons where there were 3 authors, and 1 wrote thrillers, 1 wrote romance, and then I wrote fantasy. And I'm like, yes,
that's great.
Your only choice. So, yeah. So, know your venue. Like when I go, I always walk around and I'm always looking for other authors. And it's not that, they're my competitors, but I want to know the, lay of the land. Like, are there 17 fantasy authors?
Right.
Are there, if you're selling a graphic novel, I don't really think we compete. So, and I'll still talk and say hi and, whatever. But, I want to know, am I one of 6 choices? Am I the only choice for what I write? It's good to know. it probably gives me false confidence, but um,
There's a lot to take in, including your location. I mean, location within the floor where your table is. One of the reasons James and I started doing big conventions together is that we can share the cost, because
yeah,
we get vendor booth, we get a corner booth, exhibition booth. So we're in the mid. We're usually in the middle of everything.
yeah,
But those tables cost literally thousands. Like we'll spend, so it's like, maybe if it's me, Darren, and James, we're each putting in $500-600, which is what you pay for an Artist Alley table, but we're combining it together to buy this really
right,
big thing. But the point is that we're in the middle of everything, and so we have I know people who are in Artist Alley and they're like, oh, there's no traffic, we're doing terrible, and we can't even. We're just nonstop people, because if they want to go to see the movie stars, they got to pass us, or if they want to go eat, they got to pass us.
right.
So
I
that's important.
like I said, I've done these 2 Steel City shows with James. That's the only 2 times I've been with another author, and I'm like, I've got to do this more. It's so nice because, one, I mean, James is a great partner. He's like, well, and if you don't want like what I have, Mike has a bunch of books. Talk to him. I mean, and you sell yours first, and you're like, and there's more here, so don't leave. Plus, I mean, you get the freedom. You can walk away, and I mean, I've sat there for like an hour and a half, like I've not talked to a single soul, and I'll be like, but if I go to the bathroom, then the rush of people is going to come.
It happens every time.
And I'm like, you have 90 minutes of evidence that no, people are not knocking people down to get to your table. Why are you? But just having another person,
Yeah,
wonderful, absolutely wonderful. I need to find authors who I can do. I know some authors, but one person I know likes to sit down and look at his phone the whole time, and you have to like interrupt him. And I'm like, I'm not sharing the table with you because I'm doing all the work that way. And no,
somebody who's going to actually work. And then there's a lot of benefits to sharing tables with other authors. And
really
one of the big ones is, again, James and I and Darren, if the 3 of us have a table, well, I'm pulling in people using my shtick. And like we talked in the beginning, they're doing the same thing for their people, but those people come to the table and we all know to pass them down when we're done. So I get a lot of sales from people I never would have pulled in the first place, because Darren did it or James did it, and I'm getting a sale out of the deal. So, it makes a big difference as well.
The people who come for that stupid hand puppet dragon that James has, and has to get a fist bump, and then next thing you know, they're leaving with an illustrated hardbound.
Yeah, talk about trying to find out what works for you. If I put in that little, I guarantee people would look at me like I'm the strangest thing. But he has a puppet dragon on his hand, and he makes little puppet jokes, and people love it. And I'm amazed. He also must have the strongest arms in the world, because he will sit there pretending it's flying all day for a 10-hour day. And I'm just constantly amazed. Even if nobody's like, if we're dead, there's nobody. Yeah. He'll still be doing it. I'm like, nobody's here, right? You don't have to do. He's like, oh, I didn't even realize I was doing it. It's like, oh my goodness.
So yeah, if you're going to do a con, I would almost say if you're going to do your first con, see if you can't pair up with somebody, especially someone who's done a con before, but maybe doesn't have 25 books to your 2. But somebody who has like 5 books, and just be like, let's share a table. You can learn from them. You don't have to worry about your stuff. I know it's stupid, but at the end of every con, I have a little something to throw over top of my books, and I'm like, no one's going to steal my books. I'm like, in the grand scheme of things, they're not expensive. They're kind of heavy. I mean, I talked to one author. He's like, man, I'd love for someone to steal my books. I hope they steal 5, because you know why? Now they'd find 4 other people who want to read it. They're going to do marketing for me, and they're going to distribute the first book in my series. He's like, can I pay for this?
No, I've only ever had 1 book stolen, and I watched it happen, which is a whole story. But yeah, people don't steal books. It just doesn't happen. I still cover mine at the end of the day too. It's partially, I think, just ritual. It just feels like I'm finished for the day. I just keep some dust off of that, just keep it a little more, that kind of stuff. But it's
so. So again, inspired by James, with the first time I did that, he sells his buttons and his magnets and everything. So I get little metal swords about yay tall, and I'm like, buy a book, you get a free bookmark. And I had so many people like, I just want the sword. How much is the sword? And so after like a year, I'm like, I should probably just sell this, sell the swords.
Oh,
so
flip it. The sword costs you $15.99, and you get a free book with it. It doesn't matter if the money's coming from the book or it's the 15. You're still selling, for whatever it is, and just give them the book.
Well, I mean, I actually made a little display, and I'm like, okay, the swords are $3 or $2, 3 for $5, or you get it free if you buy a book. And I will tell people, is there someone you want to stab? And that usually gets them to do a double take and like, what? And I point to the swords. And then I'm like, it's a freebie if you buy the book. Then you have plausible deniability because you bought a book, not a sword.
So here's my thing on that, though. Is that's great, especially because you only have a few books there, and you want something to try and engage with them. But as you write books, which I'm sure you're doing, and as you get more and more books out, you want to, I believe, this is just my opinion, I away from all that. Like I have bookmarks, so you can just pick them up for free. You just take them off my table because that's just advertising. But I want you to be at my table because you want to buy my book. That's why I'm the show. I'm not running a store where I'm selling buttons and tchotchkes. I am selling books because I want you to read my books because that's why I wrote them. That is my only interest. And now I have the benefit now at this point in my life where I have so many books, I can't even fit them all on. So there's no room for anything else. And I totally understand why people, I know people like to put out chocolates and other stuff and draw people in, or to make extra money. And you just have to decide what's your goal. In some cases, when you only have a few books out and the table is expensive, your goal is not to lose your shirt. So you want to get that. But just keep in mind, I've seen people where they do that, and then they forget why they were there in the first place, and suddenly it's all about how to make their tables more items instead of books. And I'm like, you're thinking it backwards. The items is supposed to be a lost leader to get you them to buy a book.
Right. So if Ro was here when we do Comic Cons, I'm with you. I do the swords because it's 10% extra that I make it at Comic Cons, and I'm at the point where that's a nice number. I like it. Now give me 4 more books and maybe it's not such a big deal. But Ro takes it. His is almost like a flea market. He has Magic the Gathering cards. He has Lego figurines, and he normally beats me at sales total. But if we talk books, I bury him. Right. And I'm like, I get it because it makes it financially worth your while to do it, but I'm not there to sell Lego figurines or
you're there to want people to read the book. And then especially if it's a series, you sold book 1, you're going to sell books potentially 2 and 3. You won't know when, it'll just be online sales, but there's more money that you're making out of that convention than you realize down the road, after the convention. But this is not, again, if you want to sell stuff, not just you, but anybody listening to this, if you want to sell stuff, sell it. But just realize that there's, like I said, I'm not trying to be anything but an author who's selling his books so you will read his books and tell people that they're wonderful and more people to read his books and that kind of thing. I'm not, I wouldn't do these conventions otherwise. Like I know people who make 3D printed stuff where they make this and that, and that's what they're doing. And then they also wrote a book so that they put it up there, but they're just trying to make money.
Right.
And they can. And I applaud that. I'm like, go for it. If that's making you happy and you're doing that, great. But you specifically, Mike, because I know you're writing and putting out more and more stuff, that I didn't want to fall in that trap that I've seen people where they forget the purpose.
I talked to one author, and I've been following on that path since. He had a corner booth for himself. He had 4 books, and you know what he had on his table? 4 books, each one on their own stand, and they were 3 feet apart. And he's like, "Look, I don't even put my sign-up sheet for mailer lists on the table." I will bring it. I'm like, do you want to sign here? I'll bring it out and you can sign. He goes, I'll have all the stuff behind me, all the banners and everything, to catch the eye. But once you come here, I don't want to have anything on my table to, draw the conversation to, oh, this is a neat Lego. I don't want to talk to you about Legos. I want to talk to you about my books. Right. And I'm like, that makes a whole lot of sense.
That's like this. I was at a convention once, I forget where, and there's a guy who makes, this is wire. He makes little wire art, and he really liked Max Porter stuff. So this is this dude back here. This is Marshall Drummond as a kind of a wire-made ghost.
Nice.
I'm sure. And he's like, yeah, and you could put that on your table, and it'll look really cool, on your at your show. And obviously he wanted me to do it so it would advertise. Right. I will give him this much of a shout out. It's Twisted Wire Art, Twisted Wire Art US. So there, he got something out of it. But I never bring it with me to a show because I could put a book where this stands. This is on my table. I love this thing, but I'm not going to put anything but pretty much books on my table.
Yeah, I made that mistake where I was, filling the whole table. Like I have to have something to catch the eye on the whole table, and I had like a 3D print, the dragon that you see and people are like, oh, this is really cool. Where'd you get it? And I'm like, I don't want to talk to you about someone else's 3D printed dragon. That's, Yeah. So yeah, I'm like I said, the swords are kind of if you buy a book, you get a bookmark, and I've had people like, you should have led with that. I want a book just for the bookmark, and I'm like, okay, but yeah, I that will eventually go away because I will have more things to sell, and I have one sci-fi series, I have one fantasy series. I'm writing another novella sci-fi series, so I have a third entry point into my writing, and
yeah, it just takes time. It'll all I've written a mountain of books just because I've been writing for a long time. That's it. Special magic there. It's just you're doing.
I really want to actually finish a series. So people are like, "Are you going to finish, or are you going to George R. Martin me?" So I would love to have a finished series, but then I'm like, you know what? I also want to have more entry points. So this will be 3 series I have running. Yeah, that I'll have to alternate between, and I'll get there. But
oh yeah, I usually have 2 or 3 series running at the same time. Because it would, if all 70 of my books were Max Porter, I would be making a lot more money than I make. But I would have been, I just would have been so boring after a while. Different thing, me interested and excited, because I figure if I'm not interested and excited, how can I expect you to be interested and excited as a reader? Right. But finishing them is fun too. I mean, trying to write the end of the series and do it well is a whole form of its own. It's been exciting to do.
Yeah. So there's a number of the authors that I know, they give me grief because, my rule, I will not read a book over 500 pages because you just need a better editor. And I'm like, when I come to the 7th book in this series and I have to tie up all the loose ends, I'm like, I don't know if I can do that in under 500 pages. And everyone's going to laugh at me because then they'll be like, did you read your own book?
What you do is write it. And when you realize it's 800 pages, you're like, no, that's 2 400-page books. There you go. Problem solved.
There we go.
Tolkien is good enough for all of us.
Amen. So, well, Stuart, I've kept you here for an hour and 15 minutes, so I appreciate your time. A lot of stuff we talked about, and we just like the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
But so when is your next book coming out, and what is it again?
So the next book I have, excuse me, is the sequel to this book. This is Pioneers of the Pathway, and I will give you a little scoop here. It's 90% sure it is going to be called Lions of the Pathway. Is book 2. I'm about 60% done, so I would expect it out. Well, if I can get my butt moving fast enough, and if my edit proves that it's actually good, it will be out hopefully before GalaxyCon Raleigh, which is in mid to late July. And if it's not out by then I'm working harder on it. And it will be out July or August.
Summer of this year.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. I mean, I should be done with it in the next couple of weeks.
Okay, so just go ahead and list all of your books for us now. in alphabetical order.
How about this? The easier thing to do, go to stuartjaffe.com.
Yep.
That's the website. My whole catalog is there with links to get everything. And on the front page of there, somewhere on there is a link to click on. Join my mailing list. And if you join my mailing list, you'll get the ebook to this for free. So you can try it out and get yourself addicted for free, and then you can pay me for the rest of your addiction.
You're like a drug dealer. The first one's free. First hit is free.
Fully, happily admit that we run the drug dealer mentality, and I'm actually, you'll get that free, but you'll get some extra free tastes of other stuff as well. So it's not ashamed to give you a lost leader. When I have so many books, it's harder for a guy like you. You give away book one for free. You only have a couple other books to sell.
Right.
If you like this book, there's 18 more in the series and more coming. The series is ongoing. So I have plenty of chances for you to give me your money. Just enjoy the book.
Okay. Well, once again, thank you, sir. Thank you, Stuart. I wanted to call you James for some reason, but you are not James. You look a little different from James. Height, among other things. So thank you, Stuart, for being here. We're going to call it now, and it's the only thing we have left to do is to wave awkwardly at people while we wait for the show to end. So